Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today we need to take a look at the next rotation. Every year I do a little prediction video for the next rotation. I'm a little bit later than I usually would be this year, but I realise I haven't done it yet. So let's take a look at almost certainly when the next rotation is going to be, and also how it's going to impact us, because I'm telling you right now, well, like most years to be honest with you, this is gonna be a big one. And just quickly before we get going here, I want to let you know we are doing a Surging Sparks box break on Whatnot tomorrow, 7:30 PM UK time, Thursday the 12th. We're going to be doing a box break of Surging Sparks. It's going to be awesome. Use the link in the description for £10 credit. And yeah, come join our Surging Sparks box break. We're going to hunt for Pikachu and Latias. It's going to be awesome. Or just come hang. It'll be fun. Now, first things first, when is it going to be Scarlet and Violet 9? Now, I don't have a pack art for Scarlet and Violet 9, so sorry about that. But look, the rotation came in with Scarlet and Violet 1 becoming legal. The day Scarlet and Violet 1 became legal, Japan rotated. The day Scarlet and Violet 1 became legal, we rotated. Okay? So that's pretty instructive. Scarlet and Violet 5, however, that was your Temporal Forces, and the day that became illegal in Japan, they rotated. The day that became illegal over here, we rotated. Ergo, every fourth set, we rotate when it becomes legal. That is Scarlet and Violet 1, Scarlet and Violet 5, and Scarlet and Violet 9, which will be our, well, what has traditionally been a February set, but the last couple of years has actually been a March set. But either way, when that becomes legal for tournament play, that's when we're going to be rotating. I can't say this for absolute certain, but I do feel extremely confident about this. Like, if we have a look at the 2024 announcement, you will see that they were pretty clear about this, and they rotated the E regulation mark, and it was from April the 5th, which of course was the day that Temporal Forces became legal. As a side note, PTCG Live, it actually came in on March the 21st, which is basically when Temporal Forces was actually released, or actually the day before it was released. So TCG Live, it kind of comes in immediately, but standard, we have to wait until 2 weeks after the official release date of the set. So that's when it's going to happen, and I can't give you the exact date, but I expect it to be announced for Japan very shortly, as in this month, and then for us sometime between now and February, March time. But we've had this cadence for a little while now. Expect the rotation to be the day that Scarlet and Violet 9 becomes legal. And then, assuming a regular cadence, whatever Gen 10 is, when the base set of that becomes legal, should be our rotation next year. But again, that's all speculation for now. That's getting too far ahead. In terms of what the rotation is going to be, yeah, I feel really good about this one. We're just going to rotate Regulation Mark F. Because that's what we do. Every year, we rotate a new regulation mark. Last year, we rotated Regulation Mark E. So this year, we rotate Regulation Mark F, which is not perfect, all right? But it's essentially Scarlet and Violet on. That's what we're talking about here. We are talking about Scarlet and Violet onwards, as in that's what we're going to have. So we're rotating out Regulation Mark F, and we are essentially going to Regulation Mark G onwards. When did Regulation Mark G actually come about? When did it begin in the Pokemon TCG? Well, that would be Scarlet and Violet base, which actually makes things a little bit easier. Because essentially, everything with a yellow border goes. Any card with a yellow border, that is Sword and Shield or before, all of those cards are gone. If it's got a yellow border, it's no longer legal for tournament play. If it's got a silver border, it's, well, probably is going to be legal. It's actually going to be one of the easiest and cleanest rotations in terms of figuring out what we keep and what goes away that we've had for a very long time. Because we lose Regulation Mark F, which is essentially up to and including Silver Tempest, which was the last of our really Crown Zenith, let's be honest with you. It's really Crown Zenith. And then we keep everything Scarlet and Violet onwards. Which, honestly, I like this. This makes our lives very, very easy. And I'm a big fan of anything that makes our lives a little bit easier. So essentially, we're keeping Scarlet and Violet, and we're getting rid of anything Sword and Shield. We had the last year of Sword and Shield still being legal. That's going away now. We don't have that anymore. Now we have this. And this means we're going to lose entire categories of cards. There are going to be entire types of cards that essentially go away and are gone forever. So, for instance, every single VMAX. Now, there weren't many VMAXs still lying around. We lost the majority of them last year. But we still did have a few holdovers, a few that were still legal. Like, for instance, the Hatterene VMAX that came around in Crown Zenith, as an example. That was Regulation Mark F. Nobody played it, that's not the point, we still had it. VMAXs haven't been competitively viable for a while now. But it also means we're losing V-Stars. And obviously we've got a couple of pretty big V-Stars around at the moment. Specifically, I'm talking about Regidrago, and I'm talking about Lugia. These are big cards, big relevant cards, which we are going to be losing to the rotation. They're going to be going away, and they are going to be lost to the sands of time. All VMAXs and all V-Stars are essentially going away, and they're not going to be legal anymore. And that's kind of relevant because they're honestly pretty big decks. And we're losing all Radiant Pokemon, because they again were the Sword and Shield style of card. So, I mean, the biggest of these, of course, is your Radiant Greninja. Huge card, sees a redonkulous amount of play, but then you've got things like Radiant Charizard, which of course is a very widely played card, and then to a lesser extent you've got things like Radiant Alakazam, which I don't think anyone's going to argue on the same level as the last two, but still a decent card that saw a bunch of play. Up until now, the vast majority, not all, but the vast majority of decks have been playing some Radiant Pokemon or another. That's going to move going forward. So all VMAX, all V-Star, all Radiant Pokemon, all of them are going away and they're not coming back. But then we've got the other losses. Cards for decks which you don't have to have, but is going to make the deck significantly weaker. And one of the biggest ones I'm looking at here is Kirlia. Right now, as I record this week in Japan, Gardevoir is the top deck in the metagame. Or the second top deck. It's one or two. It's been flip-flop in the past couple of weeks. But Gardevoir is, at worst, a top 2 deck over in Japan. Yeah, that, as I record it, is number 1. It is literally number 1 by the latest metrics by Pokecard Book, who's pretty good at this. The thing is, one of the best things about Gardevoir, one of the things that makes it such a good deck, is that it can use the Kirlia from Silver Tempest, which has got that built-in draw engine. See where I'm going with this? We're losing that Kirlia, and that means we're losing the draw engine. And that means that although Gardevoir will still be legal for tournament play, because Gardevoir was from Scarlet and Violet, it's not going to be the same deck. And this is what we need to look at with rotation. We've got decks like Lugia and Regidrago where, like, well, we lose the Pokemon. Like, we literally lose the main Pokemon for the deck. Obviously, that deck's done. But then we've got other decks like Gardevoir, which, to all intents and purposes, is still legal, but it's not legal in any real recognizable way because losing Kirlia is a huge, huge issue. The good news is we actually do have, after that, the other top decks are largely staying intact. And I'm not saying we're not losing anything, all right? But I'm saying that largely they're intact. You know, Dragapult is a deck that really revolves around Dragapult and Drakloak and all of that. And that's actually going to survive the next rotation as well. We're good. Miraidon is going to lose a couple of tricks. You know, Raikou stands out as a card that Miraidon is going to be losing. But you've still got Miraidon. And you've still got Electric Generator, and you've still got a bunch of stuff like Iron Hands. So I'm not saying we're not losing anything, but I'm saying that Miraidon as a whole is going to survive quite nicely. There we go. And then we've got decks like, for instance, Ancient Box. Ancient Box is a very good deck right now. Got a lot better with Surging Sparks. And basically anything we need for that is still here and still legal and still good. We're not really losing anything particularly relevant here, because what we really need is stuff like Roaring Moon, for instance, while we've still got Roaring Moon. So jobs are good, and the new Koraidon I'm a huge fan of from Surging Sparks. That one is staying quite nicely. We're still going to have Professor Sada's Vitality, which is a very important card in the list. But we're not going to have Dark Patch. Dark Patch is going to rotate out. But then again, do we necessarily need Dark Patch? Because Professor Sada's Vitality can accelerate 2 energy. That's 8 energy over the course of the game, assuming you never recover it, which a lot of the time you will. And actually, there's a bunch of lists that don't play Dark Patch anymore. So there's an argument that even though we're losing Dark Patch, that's a big loss, and actually, it doesn't really matter so much. We're basically losing Regidrago, Lugia, and, well, we're not losing Gardevoir, but again, cannot overstate quite how badly Gardevoir is getting nerfed. So, yeah. Never mind. And again, there are going to be other knock-on effects like Dark Patch, which is going to hurt these Ancient Box decks, but you can probably survive without it. It's just that some builds of it are going to be a fair bit weaker. But then we get to the general stuff we lose, the stuff that's going to affect everybody, and this is going to be a little bit interesting here. Obviously, all the Lost Zone stuff is gone, which largely impacts Lost Zone specifically, but there was plenty of ways to play around with Lost Zone and combine with other archetypes and all of that. But things like Comfey, Mirage Gate, all of that, all those Lost Zone things, they're all gone. Lost Zone is a thing of the past. Things like Forest Seal Stone, for instance, which gives you a V-Star power to let you search for any card. That gives consistency to a huge bunch of decks. And yeah, that one's gone. And obviously, its best friend, Rotom V, that's going. And its other best friend, Luminion, both of which are very good consistency cards, they are also going. And this happens with every rotation. We lose a bunch of consistency cards, and that is exactly what's happening here. We're losing Lost Vacuum, which is our best way of getting rid of tools and stadiums right now as an item card. That's going away, which is going to make tools and item cards that little bit stronger. We're losing stuff like Pokestop, which obviously is a huge engine for a lot of faster decks and decks that are more reliant on item cards. But now that's going away, and that's going to be a little bit of a problem. We're losing double turbo energy. And okay, fine, it did the minus 20 damage, boo hiss, etc. But you know what? That was a great card for a whole bunch of decks, because it meant that you could pay attack costs that would otherwise be far too less. Far too less? Far too expensive. You know what I mean? We're losing Beamerel, which is a draw engine which has powered so many decks over the past few years, but now that one's gone entirely. One of the biggest losses, low-key, is actually going to be Hisuian Heavy Ball, because that has been an absolute godsend for getting cards out of your prizes. You know, if you prize a Pokemon, you go and play Hisuian Heavy Ball to get it back. But now all of a sudden Hisuian Heavy Ball is going, so when you've got Pokemon prize, it is going to be a lot more awkward to get it back than it would otherwise have been. Manaphy, your best way to protect against bench damage, is going away. And this is what happens when we hit these big rotations. Yeah, sure, there are going to be some decks that is completely destroyed. Some decks that are technically here, but we all know they're gone. Some decks which are hurt a little bit. Some decks which survive normally. But then we've got all these other cards which basically affect every deck, but to differing degrees. And we're losing all of those as well. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of other cards that are going, but I think those are, well, what we talked about in this video are the main things we're going to be losing, the main impact. I feel very confident it is going to be Regulation G onwards. I feel very confident it is going to be the day that Scarlet and Violet 9 becomes legal for tournament play. So, yeah, there we go. That's what you need to know. And now it's over to you guys. Tell me what you're going to miss from rotation. Tell me how your deck fares. Tell me anything you want to tell me in the comment section. Got us! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi, That's where we talk about Pokémon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all kinds of fun things. And get shoutouts on the channel like the lovely It's a Coaster, who is awesome and active in the Discord and just seems generally lovely. So thanks to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.